computer. Does it come up recording on your end?
No.
It says it's recording.
Should I press record?
No, you don't need to. You don't need to. Yeah, I think that's good to go, mate. Thereabouts. Hey, mate, how you doing? You good?
I'm all good, mate, yeah.
Mate, it's brilliant to speak to you. It's been a while. I think it's been about a year since I was up in Rochdale last.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be. That was a long train journey, yeah?
Yeah, mate. That was it the train from Leeds, was it?
Yeah,
Leeds up. Yeah, epic. Mate, I'm going to start off by, as I start the shows normally. So, what is the best thing that you've done in the last couple of weeks?
Well, it's been a pretty quiet couple of weeks, right? With lockdown, obviously, we got over Christmas. Honestly, the best, most valuable thing I've done over the last couple of weeks is just being able to be at home and spend more time with the kids, if I'm honest. It's one of them, innit, with the lockdown that's come on. You've got to, whether you agree or disagree with it, you've got to kind of make the most of what you've got at the time, haven't you? And being able to stay at home and spend more time with my kids is more valuable to me than anything. So, you know, like I said, whether you agree or disagree with lockdown rules, that is one positive that's come out of it for me, that I've been able to spend more time with my kids. So, yeah, that's the best thing I've done.
Oh, hoofing, mate. I mean, like, it's I've definitely found that as well. But what I found is quite difficult to juggle being at home with the kids and still trying to work and do your business side of stuff, compared to having that quality time that you got the opportunity to. I find I'm a little bit more guilty now that I can't do more time with the kids and I'm at home. It's quite like, it's quite tricky,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Mate, I want to start off by talking about, I'm going to put this into context. So do you want to just explain where you're from and what your childhood was like and where that decision to join the Marines came from?
Yeah. I'm from Rochdale, which for those, for those not from up this way, it's a small town, North Manchester. I fucking love Rochdale. You'll hear a lot of bad stuff about it in the news, and you'll hear a lot of people slagging it off and stuff because it is quite a rough town. But I love it. Everyone from Rochdale's always supported me in everything I've done, and I feel like, even though it is, it's not the most well-to-do town, let's say, but the people that live in this town are amazing. Obviously, I grew up here up until the point I joined the Marines. Mum, dad, brother. Good, normal family upbringing, mate, to be honest. There's no sob story or nothing like that for me. My mum and dad, both amazing people, both brought us up really well, me and my brother. My brother's my best friend, so, I've got no sob story in my childhood whatsoever. When you ask about, this is something I thought about recently, actually. When you ask about why I joined the Marines, because when people have said, why have you joined the Marines? I always used to say, oh, it's for the challenge and blah, blah, blah. And it was for the challenge as well, but it was also because, growing up, I had quite a lot of friends, quite a lot of mates, a good peer group and stuff like that. But I never really felt like I was respected for anything particular. If you've got the guy who's like the captain of the football team. People respect him because he's the captain of the football team. He adds value in that way. Or you have people that are, I don't know, he's really good academically and people look up to him for that. I didn't feel like that was ever me growing up. I felt like I kind of really never had anything that I was good at, if you get what I mean. I was good at being one of the boys and having a laugh and having banter and all that stuff, but I never had a particular thing that I kind of gave any value to the world with, if that makes sense. And not that I joined the Marines to give value to the world either, but it made me want to do something to challenge myself in a way that people might look at me and say, you'll never do that, kind of thing. And again, not to prove people wrong or anything like that. And I've never had the mindset of I'll do this and show them or anything like that. But just for me, I wanted a really big challenge that would be something that people would maybe think he'll never do that, because it would, for me, that would be the thing that gave me value or gave me some form of respect for being valuable in some way, rather than just being one of the lads who's a laugh at weekends, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does, mate. I mean, where did that come from? I mean, is that just inherent in you, or was that something that your family built in you in terms of like seeking challenge, or like, because you just said there that you're just one of the lads, and like you said that you hadn't really had that in your life. So where did that come from? What was the
I don't know, mate. I mean, inherently, some of it, obviously, like my dad was in the military, he was in the Fusiliers, and my mum's a very adventurous person as well. So I've always had a little bit of adventure in me from them two. But I also think that, like growing up, I kind of shied away from big challenges, if you know what I mean. Like I did little things, like I play for the football team or anything like that, but I never felt like I was a guy who could step up to the plate when there was a big challenge, or at that point in my life, I never felt like I had took the opportunity to step up to the plate and put myself in a challenge where there's a high possibility of failure. And that was it for me. Was obviously the Marines is a fucking high. Sorry, I mean, I swear on this podcast. You never know.
You do what you need to do, mate. You do what you need to do.
Yeah, it's a fucking big challenge, right? So, and obviously, when you're applying to join the Royal Marines, people are like, "You'll never do that. It's this and that." So for me, that was it. That was the big time to step up to the plate and less gobbing off and more doing.
And how did? Can you remember Can you remember what it felt like when you were on the train, I assume, coming down to the station, like Livingston Station, or the days preceding that, what your thoughts were? Because this is, talk about pick a big challenge. They're in a lot bigger in terms of contrast from your life to where it was and where it was going. How did that mindset of yours, how was it able to cope essentially with that decision?
So I was quite lucky. One of my best mates growing up, Wayne Shayler, he actually joined on the same day as me. Do you know Shayler?
Yeah.
South Major. Yeah. So me and him, obviously, we grew up together, went to school together, same football teams, got the same birthday. My house and his house was 400 meters away from each other growing up and all that. And we applied together, did the same PRMC together, and we joined the same recruit troop together. Mad how it turns out, right? But we actually joined together, so we travelled down together, and we had like the few days beforehand, we were always bouncing off each other, so we were very lucky in that way. It wasn't quite as frightening an experience as I imagine that some other people would have had. But then you land at Lympstone, and you get off that train, you get off that platform, and you've got that DL screaming in your face. And then all of a sudden it dawns on you that, shit, I am on my own here. There is no one can help me. So yeah, I'd say that's how it was for me. It was like beforehand, I was more excitement and bouncing off my mate a little bit. And then the second we got there, it was like, what the fuck is this place about?
Shock and capture.
Yeah, because I mean, on your PRMC is obviously very physically difficult and stuff. But when you get to the end of it and you pass it, they give you a slap on the back and we can't wait to see you in basic training and all. You go away thinking you've already done it, don't you? And then you can't wait to get back and you're thinking it's going to be the same. And then you get there and you realise you're on the bottom rung of that ladder. So
and the PRMC, just for those that don't know, or do you want to explain what the PRMC was?
Yeah, so the PRMC is, I think it stood for Potential Royal Marines Course. So it's like 3 or 4 days of an absolute beasting where they trying to see who's got the potential and who hasn't. And you know what? The unfortunate thing with that is you lose a lot of people who have actually got potential, but just for some reason on that week either didn't show it or didn't pass a certain criteria or whatever. But that's the way it is, mate. And at the end of the day, in the Royal Marines, we're trying to build soldiers. We're not trying to build footballers or athletes or fucking influencers. We're trying to build robust soldiers, so that's the way it is, and that's the way it must be, unfortunately.
And how did you find training as a whole? What was your biggest takeaways or things when you reflect on that process? Anything that stands out in terms of developmental, personal development for you?
Yeah, very much so. Like when we first started basic training, obviously I was really young. I was only 17 and pretty skinny, pretty small. Wasn't really anywhere near as athletic as the other guys. I've been training quite hard
Not much
to
changed
join
now
up.
then.
What? Hey mate, listen, just because you're 16'8".
16'7".
Sorry, mate. My apologies. But yeah, obviously I joined up young, small, skinny, inexperienced, done nothing in life really, and then the first few weeks, it's one of them, innit? I got down there and I'm thinking, oh, there's no way I'm going to do this. You know, fuck, everyone's going to be right. There's no way I'm going to be able to pass this. What the fuck was I thinking doing this? And then as you start just switching off to the negative thoughts or even the positive thoughts and just start focusing on getting the jobs done. Because when you first join up in basic training, they actually say to you, don't they? Like, do not think of this as 32 weeks, because if you think of it as 32 weeks, there's no way you can, like, your mind cannot process that 32 weeks because you're living in this moment right now. And if you try and think of each of them moments lasting 32 weeks, it's impossible. And they try and tell you to, to take it day by day, step by step. And it was after a few weeks that actually kind of settled into my brain, started thinking, yeah, I need to stop thinking about I'm not going to be able to do this or next week or next month or whatever. And I need to just focus on right now, what this job that I'm doing right now. And obviously, as the weeks and months go by, you get better and better at that, of staying in the moment and focusing on whatever task you're doing. And then that builds up and it builds momentum. And then I remember, like, there was foot and mouth disease when I was in basic training, so we couldn't go on Dartmoor. So they were using alternative training areas, and they actually took us out to West Virginia, to do part of our basic training. And we went out there for 3 weeks. And I remember getting to West Virginia, and we went straight into 3 weeks worth of exercises back to back. So like Monday to Friday in the field, Saturday, Sunday off, Monday to Friday in the field, Saturday, Sunday off, Monday to Friday in the field. And obviously before we got there, we're all shitting ourselves 3 weeks in the field. That's honking when you're a recruit, isn't it? Because it's stopping. And just being able to rely on that mindset of just getting through the next 5 minutes, the next 10 minutes, the next hour, the next day, and all that. I remember about halfway through that kind of 3 week period thinking, oh shit, we've nearly done it now. And I didn't feel like I'd done much, and I didn't feel like it had been that hard compared to what we'd done in the past. Or it was, obviously, it was harder, it was more tests, it was more physical. Everything has been progressed a little bit. Your map reading, your soldiering, all that stuff has been progressed. So it is harder. But I didn't feel it was harder because I was focusing on the important stuff, getting the important bits right. And that's kind of when it actually sunk into me that I'm actually becoming a Marine. I'm actually becoming a soldier. I'm just doing what they said to do. You know, these experts who've been doing it for years, don't focus on 32 weeks, just focus on whatever you're doing right now. I kind of realized, shit, yeah, I'm actually doing that. I'm actually applying it without putting too much thought into it. I was actually doing it. Got to that point where yeah.
It become a habit, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it became a habit, and it didn't take much thinking about anymore. And that is something that I probably speak to people about that every single day. Not necessarily using the Royal Marines or using recruit training as an example, but I probably speak to people every single day about focusing on being in the moment, living in the moment you're in, controlling the things you can control and forgetting the things that you can't. I probably speak to people about that every single day. And for me, that's probably the most important thing that anyone can do to progress at anything in life and start living a happier life or more successful life. And it's also probably the number one thing that people fail to do or fail to address with no fault of their own. It's just that, number one, they even don't know it. They don't realize that they're obsessing about some future that might never happen, or they're obsessing about some past that's already happened and is gone. It's not that, either they don't know, or a lot of times when it's been pointed out to them and they are aware of it, they don't start to develop that skill, or they don't see it as important enough, because it's not cool and it's not flashy to just focus on living in the moment, focusing on what you're doing. It doesn't sound like a massive leap, or it doesn't sound like something that's going to give you massive gains in the future, but it genuinely is. It's the foundations of your house, you know.
So I suppose it's like, I love an analogy, but I suppose it's like
Love's a good analogy.
High pressured football game, penalty taker. The penalty taker walks up to the spot and he's thinking about scoring the goal without even the ball placement or the step backs or the mental rehearsal where he's going to place the ball, and then the run up, and he's thinking about the goal and then he'll miss because he hasn't lived in the moment at every single time. And,
yes.
I think
so and the thing is with that, more quickly, sorry, is you've just described a perfect scenario there of someone like trying to do like a world-class achievement, score a penalty in the World Cup final or whatever, yeah? And again, that skill of living in the moment, that skill of staying focused on the things that matter, the things you have control over, it seems important in a scenario like that because it's on a world stage for a match. What doesn't seem important for people is to do that on a daily basis, on the little tiny choices they have on a daily basis, you know. So it seems like, oh yeah, I'll do that when I get there, or I'll do that when I'm, you know, I'll use fighters for an example. Yeah, I'll focus on, you know, I'll be in the zone on fight night. Well, let me tell you, if you're not in the zone in warm-ups, if you're the guy who's always looking at the coach to see if he's noticed your shadow boxing cool, or if you're the guy doing funky stretches just so that someone sees you doing them and you get the pat on the back. If that's you in training, that will be you in the fight. And like, even take fighting out of like the line, just day-to-day habits of people. If they can't do it on the general day-to-day habits, you know, I'm gutted about this, I can't do this, I can't do that, but there's a million things you can do and you have control over. If they can't develop that skill on the day-to-day habits, they've got almost zero chance of developing it when it matters on the big things. And that is like I said earlier, something I talk to people about daily. And people probably get bored of me saying it because they probably think, oh, well, he's not telling me anything different from yesterday. Well, that's because the skill that we talked about yesterday might take 2 years to develop. It might take 6 months to develop. But if you don't start it right now, you'll never get to that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think it makes complete
sense. Did I waffle on there?
No, not at all. No, not at all, mate. So why do people find it so difficult? I mean, on the face of it, it seems like quite a simple thing to do.
I think that's why it's so difficult. People usually want a magic pill more. And I don't say that in a derogatory way as well, or he's just looking for a magic pill. It's just the way society is. Everything's instantaneous. Instagram, Facebook, everything's done immediately, and people want payback for it immediately, as in likes on Facebook, comments on the social media, a pat on the back. They want immediate payment, or just someone saying you've done well immediately. That's the way kind of human nature wants. They want that payback, like autonomously almost. And for something like developing the skill of focusing, being in the zone, or developing the skill of controlling the things you can control, forgetting about everything else, it's not something that people are going to come up to you on a daily basis and say, well done about, because they're not going to even know you're doing it. It's a skill that you're developing in your mind. And a lot of the times it will feel insignificant because there's no big prize. There's no like, oh yeah, you just focused on what you needed to do today, let's give you a gold medal. That doesn't happen. It's all intrinsic, it's internal. So the only person that gives you the pat on the back for it is yourself. And then because of that, I think, because it's so simple and there is no pat on the back and it isn't instantaneous like people like, it's very difficult for many people to understand the importance of it. Does that make sense, mate?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it's really important to know, like, to try and understand why it's so difficult. And I completely get it.
If I was to say to someone, spend the next 24 hours living in the moment, focusing only on the things you need to focus on, only on the things you can control, just do that for 24 hours and you will win that world title that you want to win. They would be like, fuck yeah, I'm on it, because it takes 24 hours. If I was to say to them, do that for the next 10 years, and through doing that, the process of that journey will lead you towards your title, it seems like an unimportant. I'll just forget that. I'll just do training. I'll just eat clean. I'll do. What they don't understand is that is the foundation of it all. Do you know what I mean? It's a long-term thing.
I think that segues neatly back into what you originally said about marine training, where you got 32 weeks. If you focus on that 32 weeks, it's too much. It's quite overwhelming. But if you're focusing on the here and now, and you're just getting out of bed every day, just next minute, next hour, next mealtime, sleep, get up again, and all of a sudden the week's gone. And then
when I was in basic training, there was a South African guy now, recruit troop, and I'll never forget the guy as long as I live, because he was a unit, mate. He was called Trail Kincaid. And if you listen to this, if by some magic reason you get to listen to this, hit me up or something, mate. I'd love to get to know you again. This guy was a machine, mate. He was probably 6'1". I mean, built like a brick chicken house. You know, he was an athlete. And he was top of everything. He was about 27-year-old. He was a bit older than all of us. He was a beast. He was first on all the runs, best at pull-ups, best at rope play. He literally looked like a bodybuilder, but he was as fit as a marathon runner. He was the best at yomping. He was the best in the field at all his shit.
It's annoying, isn't it, when people are like that?
And everyone was like, Jesus, man, this guy's he was like the section commander for everything. And he was the top of everything. And we got to the end of week 7, gruesome twosome, which is like the most honking exercise ever. And then we got back to the grots after it, and he was like, "That's it, I'm done." And I was like, "What?" And literally everyone was like, "What are you talking about? Trail, you've just smashed it. You're the top. You're probably the best recruit that's ever walked through these doors." And he was like, "Yeah, but I can't do that for another 20 odd weeks." And like, it was like, mate, wounded, because like, just do today. Just do, because every today that you've done has been amazing. So if you do today again, you'll do it amazing. And if you just keep adding them todays up, you'll do amazing. But he was like, "Nah, I can't do another 20 odd weeks of this. It's I've had enough, and I'm going." And without sounding like too soft or whatever, that guy's not a quitter. He's not a quitter. He was a very, very mentally tough guy. He was the guy that you would want on your team. Like, he was a guy that I would want in Afghanistan with me, or on the mats or whatever. He's not a quitter. So people might think, "Oh, well, he quit." He's not a quitter. He just didn't have the grasp of that concept of how well he's doing when he focuses on what he's doing. And that if he just kept adding them up, he'd get there, rather than focusing on the whole thing. So he wasn't a quitter at all. He just didn't quite have the grasp of the concept we're talking about.
And so do you think that Royal Marines training prepared you for the career that you had in the Corps, in the Marines?
I genuinely say this, and I don't know how things have changed now. And I don't think they'll have changed that much. I think all the old boys like to say, "Oh, it was easy nowadays compared to my day," and all that. I didn't. So when I came back to train recruits like 7 or 8 years later, after I passed out of basic training, I think they were training just as hard as we were. There might have been certain things in there like you can't do anymore because society doesn't allow that. But the tests are all the same, blah, blah, blah. So I'm assuming that the training they do now is just as good as it was when I was there. The training that I did as a Royal Marines recruit in the year 2000, fucking 21 years ago, mate. What? That genuinely, for me, I think everyone should go through that. I think it prepares you for life in all manner of things, like whether you want to be an athlete, whether you want to just go home and be happy in life and work with your family. The lessons you learn in that, I genuinely believe, if you spend the time, obviously there are loads of blokes that we know in the Corps that maybe haven't spent the time to reflect on that and draw them lessons out and use them in their life. But I genuinely think if you do spend that time, it'll prepare you for anything you want to do in life. It's the most important 32 weeks of my life, because that has literally laid the foundations for everything I've done since.
And where your career, you went many places in your career. You completed the physical training instructors course, which, having done it myself, that mindset is absolutely required and needed.
Yes. Gopping, yeah.
Yeah. And it's basically like the PT on basic training, but on steroids.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you find that, were you more comfortable with that course, or did you find it equally as challenging in terms of mindset, or, you know, how did you fare on that?
So physically, obviously, the physical elements of the course are just way beyond anything I've done in the past, because they just are, and they should be, because you're a physical training instructor in the Royal Marines. You should be all singing, all dancing, leading by example. So the physical aspects were much harder than anything I'd done in the past. The mental aspects of it, I was well prepared for by that point. I was confident by that point that I would pass any course I was put on, no matter what it is. As long as I wanted to do it, which I did. I was confident then that you could put me on any course and I'd pass it.
I mean,
and again, that's not because I thought I was anything special or anything like that, because I genuinely didn't. I've met loads of better Marines than me, but I just felt equipped. I felt I had the right equipment to do it with, the mental equipment and physical equipment, and the skills and knowledge that I picked up and experienced. I just felt I could do it. So physically, it was a lot harder, and obviously more draining on your body, and you're exhausted pretty much for 24 weeks.
I mean, that is a different space to be in.
Yeah.
That course is significantly physically harder than basic training.
Yes.
Yeah. In basic training, you arrived and there was not necessarily doubt, but there was a little bit of anxiety to know what's going on. There was maybe a little bit of vulnerability. You didn't know, and it built you. You go on a significantly harder course.
Yeah.
And the belief that you had in your own ability, it's amazing to see in a fairly short space of time. We're not generations here. We're talking a few years.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see how you would have grown as a person to go on that course and say what you just said.
Well, mate, it's even the little things that people don't, or you take for granted. Like, for instance, when you first pass out of basic training and you go to a commando unit, and you're like the duty sprog, aren't you? You're like, your first 6 months, you're just hiding in your bedroom, aren't you? You go down to lines, you fall in, you do your thing, whatever you do, and then you think, right, get the fuck out of everyone's way so I don't get pinged for a shit job, or the lads don't take the piss out of me, or whatever. And you're kind of like a little hamster for a little bit, aren't you? Just like, no, please don't look at me, nobody see me. And then when you compare yourself, like maybe a year later, when you're strutting around camp in your lower boots and you're fucking having banter with people, and half the lads on the camp and all that sort of stuff, and the confidence that you've just built, and the same with the other lads that are around you at that time, it is a fast process, isn't it? Going from like that, like you say, that vulnerable young guy who's kind of like, to 12 months later, you may be ready to be in charge of a fire team or something, and that takes confidence.
And I'm interested to know about your Afghanistan exposure, because that's a different type of challenge. That is not a course. It's about yourself, absolutely, but that's a different concept altogether. How did you deal with preparing to do something like that, and what did you have in place to be able to overcome any sort of psychological barriers in terms of performance, shall we say, when you go to a place like that?
So first of all, I'd say that I was lucky in two ways. I was lucky in the way that by the time I went to Afghanistan, I'd already had quite a lot of experience on operations. Like, obviously, I was on the first Optelic over in Iraq. I went back to Optelic in Iraq again later date. I've been Northern Ireland. So I had quite a bit of operational experience, as well as all the other stuff like your Norways and America trips and all that. But I had that operational experience anyway of being in war zones and being in kind of conflicts and all that. So I was kind of comfortable with it, as much as a weird thing that is to say. I was quite comfortable with being there. The second way I was lucky is that the lads that I had with me, I don't really want to say the names because a couple of them are still SFSG and stuff like that. So, but the lads that I had with me as like my MOG commander, again, I won't use his name. I'll call him Grandad. He'll probably know. He'll notice him. You probably know who it is as well.
I know who that is.
It was, and he was probably the most influential soldier that I've ever met on me personally. He was our leader. He was our MOG commander, and he was just the bollocks. just a really, really good soldier, really down to earth, really approachable, really firm when he needed to be. And I just kind of, I've got this, like, Reed, he taught me, and when I was on my PT2's course, he says, like, you know, if you go to a new unit or whatever, or you're in a situation like that, ping the best bloke that you see is dealing with the situation best and just go, I'm just going to copy what he does. So that's what I did. I just thought, whatever Grandad does, I'm going to do. However he deals with problems, I'm going to do it. So I was really lucky in both of them ways. I had a really good role model and team around me. And I also had all that experience from the past to help me. So
Well,
it
mate,
wasn't like I was scared going there or anything like that.
He's come a long way, because when I first met him, he pinched my table from my room because he wanted it, and that was great. So,
Mate, when I first met him was when I first passed out of basic training, and that lad I was talking about who wanted to hide in the corner of the room, who I was when I was like 18, that was me. And he walks into the room, boots the door off, and goes, "Let's have a fucking arm wrestle, fella."
classic. And so, I mean, now that's really important. So, having a team structure around you, supporting structure, and being able to rely on the people left and right, and I think that's incredibly important to, so but habitual self-belief and doing the small things and the simple things, focusing on here and now with a support structure around you, is probably starting to form an equation of being able to perform and excel in anything that you put your hand to.
Yeah, I believe so. I definitely believe that's or give you the foundation that will lead to the opportunity to be able to do, because we're not all going to be the best at what we want to do either. If I want to be an astronaut, I'm probably not going to be an astronaut at 37 years old. If I decide today I want to be an astronaut, I'm probably not going to be the best astronaut in the world. But at least having them foundations in place will give me the best chance I could have to be an astronaut if I wanted to be one. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And it'd probably give me the best launch pad. I used an astronaut job there.
Like it.
It'd give me the best launch pad if that's what I wanted to do. It's unrealistic to think you're going to get everything you want, at all times. I want to win the lottery. I might not win it. But it is a good habit to get into, to set yourself off on whatever challenge you may take, whatever endeavor it is that you take to do those things like we talked about.
And I think that leads me on nicely to my next point. I mean, we can talk about Afghanistan till that's a whole nother show in itself. But the bit where I'm really interested in, that I don't think we've ever spoken about, just because of the way that it's been, is you've got this team, this family, this identity, this ethos, values and standards that you hold dear to your heart. You have been to war with that team. You have laughed and cried with this team, and you've got friends for life. And then you say to yourself, "I'm leaving."
Yeah.
Can you explain the situation around that? Because, we discussed before this, I remember the day that you left and how torn you were about leaving. But when you talk about opportunity, the opportunity that you had, that you didn't know if it's going to work out or not. I mean, that takes a lot of guts and like self-belief as well to be able to make that decision. I think really interesting to find out the situation around it.
Yeah, difficult, man. Difficult. So I was kind of at the point in my career where, like, I never chased promotion, I never chased promotion, or I never chased. I was never really interested in being promoted to a rank or anything. Ranks never interested me. Experiences interested me. So, like, I just wanted to. There was things I wanted to do in the Marines rather than ranks I wanted to get to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I kind of always put my name. Anything that sounded exciting or adventurous to me, I always put my name down for it and did it. And again, I feel like I was really, really lucky. So I did 12 years in the Marines, and I loved every minute of it. I never had a bad draft. Every draft I had was good, and I always put in for a draft. So for instance, when I put in to go to 40 Commando, I put in for that specifically because I knew they were going to Iraq and Norway.
And a draft is an assignment, isn't it? You get,
yeah, so like
it's
2
a new
years.
job, yeah.
Yeah, like 2 years at that 40 Commando. I knew they were doing them two things. I knew they had Iraq coming up. I knew they had Norway coming up. So I put in to go there, not thinking it was going to come off, and it came off immediately. I was like, well, that was lucky. I get to go and do them things now. And again, other people might say, well, all back here, because you'll probably get made up to Lance Jack, and then you'll get your corporal's course at 40 if you stay at 42. But I wasn't really interested in that. I was interested in doing things rather than having rank, you know. And I've throughout my whole 12 years, I always kept that mentality of just going after the experience and the adventure rather than the rank or the money or what people might have assumed as being right for a promotional standpoint. So by the time I got to the 12-year point, and I had this opportunity to leave, and we'll talk about that later in a bit. I got to the 12-year point, and I felt like I'd done everything that I wanted to do in the Marines. So I'm not saying I've done everything in the Marines, and I'm not saying I've had any sort of spectacular career, because again, there's loads of blokes done shit tons more than me. What I did in the Marines is a grain of sand in the on the beach compared to what some blokes have done. Like Grandad we're talking about right now, that guy's done a million times more than I have. But I felt like I'd done everything that I wanted to do. I'd got everything out of the experiences that I wanted to have. And also, obviously, it was quite clear Afghanistan was coming to an end, and it was quite clear the country or the military was going to be skinned, and we weren't going to be going on any ops for a while. So I'd got to that point in my career in the Marines where I'd done everything I felt like I wanted to do. I got all them experiences, and I was at the point in my professional MMA career where I think when I left the Marines, I think I'd had 6 professional fights. I'd won 5, lost 1. So I was kind of just starting out on that, and I was nowhere near doing. There was hundreds of experiences in that area that I wanted to have, and it was kind of a now or never thing, because I was 27 at the time, or 29. Sorry, I was 29 at the time. So it was like, well, if I hang on another 5 years, I'm probably going to be too old to make a start at doing those things. So yeah, the choice was either keep doing something that I feel like I've already done what I wanted to do in, or I've got on the other hand something that I've not done what I wanted to do, and I've got opportunity to do it, but it's now or never. So there was the balance, wasn't it? Because this hand over here, that's all the experience I've done, is a fucking heavy hand, mate. Because that's the one where all my mates are, my life is, like you say, my identity is. So it was a very difficult decision. But obviously, like, I've got my wife at home who's always supported me in everything I've done, and for me that's like massively valuable, because I always knew that if I do leave the Marines and I pursue this career of being an MMA fighter and it all fails, then it doesn't mean that I've failed. It just means that I failed at that one particular thing. And again, to be honest, mate, like we spoke about earlier, I've never really been scared of failure. Since recruit training, since I joined recruit training and learned the ways of the Jedi, I've never really been scared of failure. So as much as it was what torn me is the fact that I was going to leave the lads behind and leave that kind of group, that team, that I don't want to say the word gang, but it almost is. It's the lads, in it, and leave that identity, leave that day to day behind, because there's a lot of good stuff in that day to day. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of valuable stuff that you once you leave it behind, you look back on it and you think, "Oh, me, man." I remember those days where we used to get up, do fizz with the lads. Me and Ginger'd stick a fucking haggis in the microwave for dinner. We'd have a picture. You know what I mean? All that stuff is it's value. Some of those stories, right? That from the day-to-day stuff that we used to do, like tying you up, for instance, on your twos course and spraying your head to toe yellow, that kind of stuff.
Cycling across the pool cover.
Yeah, mate, some of that stuff that we just take for granted when I tell them stories to people who've obviously never experienced that, some of it's just insane to them, and to us it's day to day. And when you do leave that and you look back on it and you do find yourself telling them stories to people, you look back on it and you think, man, that was pretty insane the way we lived and what we did. And probably you're still doing now.
No comment.
No comment, mate. But
so can you explain what that offer was? Because if I remember rightly, there was a professional fight contract, but also the opportunity to run your own business as well. That was
yeah. So when I left, I didn't have a particular contract with any organisation. I'd already had, like I said, I think I had 6 pro fights at the time. And I just decided that I wanted to make a full go going professional. And at the same time as that, I started speaking to a couple of friends of mine about opening an MMA gym. And then Dixie Dean got involved, and he got us in touch with some guys that were potential investors and stuff like that. And it kind of went from there. So there was me, my friend Oggy, and my friend Derek, who opened the gym together.
What gym's that?
Full Contact Performance Centre. Yeah. So we opened. Since then, I've kind of branched off, and it's the same place and everything. But my part is now just the martial arts bit, which is SPG Rochdale. And I don't have anything to do with the commercial gym side of things anymore. And that again, that was another thing like we just talked about, where it's like, Jesus, how do I weigh this up and balance it? But I just felt like my value and all my time had to go into martial arts, because that's what I do, that's what I'm best at, and that's all I wanted to spend my time doing. And I'd never ever want to be the kind of guy who like promises something but doesn't deliver. So for me to continue being part of like the gym side of things was very difficult, because I wasn't delivering. I wasn't having anything really. I wasn't one of the coaches in the gym. I wasn't really interested in progressing the gym side of things anymore. I was just interested in being on the mats, because that's where I give my most value. You know, I can go and do a PT one-to-one with someone about bicep curls and stuff. It has very little interest for me. In martial, right, hard one to say this, but in martial arts, or hard one to explain, in martial arts, even if I'm teaching someone an armbar, which you might think has absolutely no link to the outside world or gives no value to what they do on the streets, because they're probably never going to armbar someone on the streets. I hope they never are. The way in which I teach it, or the way in which I try to teach, is what adds its value. The struggle, like getting over that little bit of adversity, and that little bit of adversity might just be the fact that you've not got your elbow tucked in. It might be 3 inches of an elbow movement, but if you spend the next 6 months trying to get it, and I can show you that little bit, and you come over that adversity, and then you can relax, stay composed, do it again next time, and make that little improvement. For me, that's like a seed, and it just grows into the rest of your life. That mentality of knowing that it's not that you're doing something wrong or you're incapable of doing something. It's that maybe you just don't quite know what to do yet, or you can will kind of mindset that you're talking about. For me, that's the value that I can bring to people, and I do that best through martial arts. So I just wanted to put all my energy into that, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how did you mentioned there where you hadn't had any contracts, you left for this business opportunity, which is an unknown, but you wanted to be a professional fighter. So
yeah.
how did that, what's the story behind that? How did that happen?
So, well, I'd already had 6 professional fights at that point. You know, Pete Jordan was obviously the Sergeant Major in the Marines, and Bo Beauchamp as well. And they were both like, yeah, go on, have a fight if you want. I think it was like, you know, it was all pretty hush-hush back then. There was no Royal Marines BJJ team or anything like that. It was all pretty hush-hush. But I had some really good blokes, Sean Lerwell as well, when he was the boss. I had some really good blokes above me that were kind of like, keep it on the quiet, but yeah, you can go and have a professional fight. It'd probably be them that got in the shit more than me, but yeah, they let me do it. So I was quite lucky that when I was leaving, I mean, I was leaving to be a professional MMA fighter more than anything. And the way MMA is, it's like, there's no governing body really in the UK. So when you leave, it's just a matter of, or when I left, sorry, it was just a matter of contacting all the promotions, all the different promoters, and saying, look, I'm ready to fight. Here's my record. What events have you got coming up? Can you get me on? And yeah, just went from there, really.
And so, you know, you only got I mean, it's really cool. I've got a mate you can Wikipedia. It's great. I mean, you've fought on many different promotions.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing your ugly mug on the TV because you managed to get a break with the UFC Contender Series.
Yeah, the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah.
It
was 16 years since UFC Ultimate Fighter won yesterday.
Wow. How did that come about? You know, you sat at home, you get a phone call, or was you like, how did that work? What was that like? That experience?
Right. So basically, what happened is the UFC advertised on all the, because like back then there was no Facebook, or there might have been, but I wasn't aware of it back then. No one in the MMA scene was on Facebook by then, or social media. What there was back then was forums. So there was like the Cage Warriors forum. So everyone who was involved in MMA was on Cage Warriors forum, and you had like a username, what do they call it, a handle and all that, and you type stuff and put messages back and forth. And UFC started advertising on all the UK boards, like forums, saying that we were bringing the Ultimate Fighter. It's going to be UK versus USA. And then they started advertising about the trials. So it was like they did a couple of days worth of trials down in London. Yeah, I think you had to register beforehand and then you turn up. And that was literally it, mate. I seen all that and I thought, yeah, I fancy that. Well, I went down and did it. And again, like I was saying earlier, I've never really been scared of failure or anything. And at the time, I didn't have permission to do it by the Marines, but I'm a big believer that it's always easier to get, you know, once you've already done something, it's easier for them to say, yeah, go and crack on, than if you ask them beforehand.
Forgiveness over permission, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. I was trying to think of the words, but I couldn't find it. So I just went and did the trials. I just went down and I did the trials. It was like, you had to grapple a couple of times, you had to hit pads, and Dana White's like literally walking around. And as he walks around, if anyone does, when you're grappling, if he doesn't like what he's seeing, he'll just go, yeah, go home. Cheers, mate. Thanks for coming. Literally like a cheers for coming. And then you're hitting pads a little bit and he's just walking around tapping people on the shoulder saying, yeah, cheers for coming, mate. And it just whittles it down and down and down.
Pretty ruthless then.
Yeah, pretty ruthless. Yeah, but again, it has to be, doesn't it? It is what it is, you know, and it's not personal. So anyone that takes it personal should really go back to that mindset stuff we were talking about earlier. But yeah, so we get to the end of that, and we all go home, and you know that you've done well by that point. You've had an interview. The day maybe started off with a couple of 100 people and ended up with about 30 of us. After that, what happened was pretty crazy, mate. So I've gone home saying, yeah, I did well, this, that, and the other, and I'm expecting an email off them or a phone call or whatever, and it never came, and thinking, oh, Jesus, man. And then my phone kept ringing late one night, and it was like, it was either a withheld number or it was like a dialing code that I didn't recognise or something like that. And I never answered phone numbers I don't know, so I'm just killing it all the time, killing it. Stop ringing. About 10:30 at night, and I'm sat with Early, and then gets about 11 o'clock and it's still ringing. So I've answered like, who's this? Do you know what I mean? Duty Rochdale bloke answer. Who the fuck's this? I was only young as well, so you know. But I was like, who's this? And this woman starts talking, and at first I thought she had a Geordie accent. So I'm trying to like place her. I'm thinking, why some Geordie woman?
Think it's Lordy.
Yeah, I think Lordy winding me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like trying to place it and all that. And then I put two and two together. I'm thinking, oh, this is American accent. And she's going, yeah, I'm such and such. I'm from the UFC. And I was like, oh, shit. And I literally said to her, I said, I nearly put the phone down on you again then, love. But that was it then. So I spoke to her and they invited me out you had to do another trial then, which was a week long. So we all went out, done that week long trial.
In the States?
Yeah, over in Vegas, yeah. Buckshee. Still didn't know if you passed or not. You came back, and then a little bit later, they got back in touch with us and invited us out there. And then that's when it all started, where I had to start going getting permission.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. So So how was that experience out there? Like, you know, you then get on the plane, you fly out to Vegas, was it? Where
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Vegas, yeah, yeah.
What was that like? What was the whole, I mean, it's a TV show, right?
Yeah, yeah. So when you're at the gym, it's not a TV show. It is, the cameras are there, but when you're at the gym, it's so this is a part of my life where I'd say I kind of lost that focus of focusing on what's important and what's not. Because when you're at the gym, it's training. You are training for a fight. You know, the coaches are, the lads are there. It's, you know, when you get back to the house, it's a TV show. It's a reality TV show. The cameras are in the front of your face. They're trying to get things out of you, trying to get you to say or act in a certain way. Not, they don't come up to you and script things and say, "Will you say this?" But they're sticking a camera in your face and they're asking you questions about, like, you just finished training, you just want to have something to eat, chill out for an hour, and then go back to training later on, maybe sleep for an hour. And they're asking you, "So, what's it like at home? What are your feelings about your mother and this, that, and the other?" And you're like, "Fucking what?" You know, to start with. But then you get drawn into it a little bit, and you kind of forget what's important and what's not. And you that time when you should be reflecting on your training, recovering, and focusing on your next session and all that, you start to interact with the cameras and interact with the TV, and you lose focus on what's in, or I lost focus, should I say, on what was important. So it was a good learning curve for me on that sort of thing. And looking back on it, it's a really big lesson that I'm able to take forward with myself, you know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's really interesting because throughout this time we've been talking about overcoming small hurdles, creating habit, discipline with that, having a team around you. But it sounds like another valuable lesson that you learned was about the environment you're in as well, because
Yeah,
you had all that stuff,
yeah,
the pillars, shall we say,
yeah.
and your environment changed.
So
And
if I would have been there with, I can't remember, I think there's 8 lads in each, so 16 blokes, yeah. If I would have been in there with 16 Marines, I know my mindset would have been different
the
because it would have
TV
been,
show would have been better as well.
yeah, TV show would have been, they wouldn't have been able to put it on air though. But I know that it would have been a different thing altogether because it would have been me as a Marine, being professional as a Marine and being who I am as a Marine, or who I was as a Marine. And I kind of made the mistake of thinking that I left that at the gates. Like, that was who I was when I was in the Marines. And when I came over to, because I was still in the Marines at that point, but when I went to Vegas, it was like, people don't want to see that. That's not who I am. You know, I'll kind of blend into this environment a little bit. Whereas now that I'm older and I can look back on it, that's exactly what people would have respected me for, or people would have, or not even people, I would have given more value for and got more value from, but I didn't. And again, it's a great experience for me to be able to look back on.
Do you regret that though? I mean,
No, no, no.
and I say that
Yeah.
because of, you know, potentially what was at stake, a UFC contract, you know, and it's like there's not it's not a defining moment, but it's a big deal. There's an
Yeah.
opportunity there. And,
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah. And it's very hard for people to understand this because I've been asked that question a million times, obviously, and no, I don't regret it at all because the lessons I've learned are more valuable to me than the UFC contract would have been. So if I would have won that UFC contract, there's nothing to say that I'd be sat where I am today having this conversation with you, and there's nothing to say that that might not have been. The UFC is just 3 letters. Yeah, people again have got this misconception if they're a UFC, they're an MMA fighter and they get in the UFC, they've made it. I know loads of blokes who've been in the UFC and not made anything, and I'm not talking about money either. I'm talking about they're just made it in life, being successful, being happy. If I would have got in the UFC at that time, I don't think I was ready for it, and I don't think it would have led to where I am now. I think I would be in a worse position now than I would have been, if you get what I mean. The lessons that I learned by making them mistakes have given way more value to my life, and also put me in a position to give more value to other people's lives, the people that I coach and stuff, than if I would have won that and got in the UFC. I'd probably have 3 or 4 fights, won a couple, lost a couple, been out, and then so what? You know, you're a flash in the pan. You know, but through them failures that I had and the lessons that I got to learn, I've been able to use all that to push people in a different direction that I did, and use all that to help other people become better, and also use it to make me become better as I've progressed through my fight career as a coach as well.
So what lessons were they? Can you give us some examples about that? When you reflect on that period, and it's fantastic that you've just said that you don't regret it. It's part of what's happened in your personal history, your professional history, and you go, you know what, I'm going to learn from that. I mean, that mindset in itself is a skill to have.
Yes.
But what lessons did you identify? Like what was it that you thought, you know what, I'm going to use that and I'm going to try and help me or other people to maybe not make the same mistakes?
So number one, and most importantly, is the one we've already spoke about, mate, is focusing on the important things, focusing on the things you can do rather than the things you can't do, focusing on the things you can control rather than things you can't control. Because I say, when I was on the Ultimate Fighter, that's what I did. I focused on the things that I had no control over. I focused on the things that I thought people wanted me to do rather than the things that I should do. All that. So number one, and again, people are going to listen to this and think I'm well boring because I'm saying the same thing I said an hour ago. Trust me, if anyone gets to know me, I'll probably say it to you for the rest of your life. And I'm saying it to myself for the rest of my life as well. But that is the number one lesson of all of it. That's where it all starts. Yeah. Number two lesson that I'd say is self-belief, because earlier on we talked about like doing my PTI's course, and I had no kind of, I wasn't scared of failure, or I knew I'd be able to pass it. Not that it was easy, or it was fucking probably the hardest time of my life physically, but I just knew that I was going to be able to do it. I knew I was equipped with the right skills and resources and experiences to do it. When I went to the Ultimate Fighter, I didn't have that feeling, because at that point, even though I think I'd had 3 professional fights at that time, I wasn't really a professional. On paper, I've had 3 professional fights, but I wasn't a professional. I was training maybe 4 times a week with proper MMA guys. The rest of the time, it was in the Stone Gym at Lympstone, doing fucking, just making myself well conditioned and fit, and doing pads with my mates or stuff like that. I wasn't really a professional. I wasn't a professional athlete. And when I got there, and when I went to the Ultimate Fighter, I knew all this, and all the other guys that were there were guys that I looked up to, like your Ross Pearsons or your Andre Winners, and that. These are guys that I followed. I looked up to them, that they were where I wanted to be. And when we got there, and I was speaking to the Americans, and that was the same with them. They were all guys that I kind of looked up to, and I wanted to be them. And I kind of didn't believe in myself because of that. I felt like I was an amateur going there in a group, and they were all a big group of professionals. Do you get what I mean? Whereas the reality of that, that wasn't the case. I was just as good as any of them, like in training and on the mats and stuff. And then, because this is another lesson moving on from that one, because when I got there and I kind of found on the mats, I can hang with these guys, I am as good as them, blah, blah, blah. I kind of found different excuses for myself to not be as good as them. Do you know what I mean? Like telling myself, oh, well, and this is a subconscious battle as well. People will probably know what I'm talking about. But even though you're hanging with them, you're doing really well on the mats, I'm still questioning, like, yeah, but on fight night, do I know what they know? I've got the experience that they've got. They're all proper pros. That's all they do for a living. I'm in the Royal Marines for a living. I'm doing this as a hobby. And all them questions are coming in, where in reality, if I'd have applied the lesson we talked about earlier, controlling the controllables, focusing on the things that are important, I would have known that none of that matters, because when the cage door locks, all that really matters is your skills and his skills. It doesn't matter about the crowd or the people observing you from home, or it doesn't matter what you did or didn't do in training or what you haven't done before. All that matters is you and him and their skills, your skills and his skills, and that's it. And if I would have focused on that instead of all the rest of it, I'd have burnt up so much less mental energy, so much less, I wouldn't call it anxiety, because I don't feel like I've ever had anxiety, but overthinking maybe, and underestimating myself, overestimating other people. So those are kind of all the lessons that I've learned from that. Is that your dog barking?
That's my dog barking.
Right, let's hope it doesn't set my gang off. I've got 3 of them in here. But yeah, those lessons, and those are lessons I try and pass on now to my. So, you mind me going off on a tangent for 2 minutes?
Mate, hold that thought. I'm going to go and sort the dog out.
Size 11. This is still recording. I'm just using this time to get through some messages.
Ideal. I'm going to have to sort that edit out now, eh?
I was just slagging you right off then.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Good. I can cut it out after this. There's no problem. Yeah, go, mate. Go
on. Sorry, mate. I forgot what we're up to then. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. So I said, do you mind me going on a tangent for 2 minutes? So, talking about people having belief in themselves and like cutting out the outside noise and that, right? So, a couple of weeks ago, I watched on YouTube, and if people get a chance to watch it, you should watch this. It's a little video of Khabib Nurmagomedov training from when he was a kid to where he's at now. And it goes through all his childhood and like, not in any depth, but it shows him out running in the mountains, and it shows him wrestling with the bear, and it shows him on the mats as a little kid and training as a teenager and blah, 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 and, running in the cold and the wet and stuff. And they make it dead Rocky IV type of theme and all that sort of stuff. And you watch it, and you're looking at it and you're thinking, yeah, man, this is a guy who believed in himself from when he was a kid, and he put that work in. And, he did them hours and then miles in the mountains, and he did all that. And even back in them days when he didn't know where he was going to, he didn't know that he was UFC World Champion, possibly the best lightweight ever. He didn't know that then, but he was still believing in himself that it was going to get him somewhere. He didn't know where, but he knew it was going to get him somewhere, right? And then when you watch that, and I watch it, and it's very inspirational to yourself, and people start, and you look at it and you think, oh, look at Khabib, look at how much self-belief he had. But if you break it down, mate, if you break that down and you forget about the big mountains and you forget about the rain and the scruffy clothes he was wearing because he was very poor and stuff like that, and you forget about his wrestling with a bear, if you cut all that out of the picture, he was just a young lad with a bit of a dream who just trained hard every day and just got on with the stuff he did every day, right? And there's lads around my town, there's lads in my gym that have got every single bit of potential that Khabib had, right? If they only realise that. So Khabib's out running in the mountains every day in, like I say, scruffy clothes, and you look at it and you think, wow, what a hardcore guy. That's no different from some kid from Rochdale with a pair of Nikes on going for a run around the streets around here. It's just a kid doing the bit of training that he knows that he needs to do to get him where he wants to be. Doesn't matter if there's mountains or clouds or rain or sunshine. It's just a young lad putting the work in to get somewhere that he doesn't know where he's going to be yet, but he knows it's going to get him towards the goal he wants. So, like, it can have a double-edged sword. When people watch videos like that about Khabib, for instance, they'll watch it with one thing, they'll be looking at it really inspired, thinking, what a guy, he's a legend, Khabib, which he is. But on the flip side of it, they'll also be thinking, oh, I don't know if I've got what it takes to do that. I don't know if, look how much he sacrificed out running in mountains and blah, blah. You don't need to be running in mountains. You just need to be running. You don't need to be on the mat with 500. You don't need to be wrestling with a bear. You just need to be out wrestling. You just need to be that kid that Khabib was. All the mountains and stuff, that's just where he lived. It's just that fortune made him live in that place, or unfortune, whichever way you see it. He ended up living in that place with the surroundings that he had. I'm sure if you would have took Khabib with the same mindset as a kid and made him live in Florida in the palm trees and beautiful sunshine, I'm sure he'd have been the same kid, and he'd have still been out doing them miles and still been out running and still been out wrestling every day and stuff. The environment and the stuff you see on YouTube and all that, it doesn't matter. It's not, you can't change it. You can't do anything about it. You live where you live. You are where you are. But the one thing you have got the control over is the fact that you're going to get up in the morning and go and do it, go and do the work, put the work in. So it's a kind of double-edged sword. And I talk about this a lot to lads, because I've got lads in my gym that I've got 100% belief that they can be every bit as good as Khabib is if they're willing to put the work in that he put in, and if they're willing to believe in the journey the way he believed in it, and that's a big if. And to get to that if, to get to that point, you have to chip away at all them layers and realize that Habib was just a young lad training hard, and that's all he did. You know, it's not all he did as in it's easy. It's not easy. That guy put some work in, but that's all he did. You don't have to worry about the mountains and the rain and the scruffy gloves and the fact that he had such a struggle or whatever. And conversely, you don't have to worry about these guys that like I say, live in Florida, that have got a real nice sunshine. They're just out running. They're just doing the work. They're just getting on with the job to get them where they want to be. The rest is just noise. It doesn't matter. And that kind of mindset. So I'm always trying to talk to guys about in my gym, especially. And you know, I believe there's a lot of guys out there that have got the potential to be just as good as Habib is. 5 years ago, people wouldn't have probably thought Habib is going to be where he is. I'm using him as an example just because when I watched that video the other week, but it's the same for anyone in life. Just do the work. Just focus the energy where it needs to be.
And I mean, it's fair to say that in the same vein as you've just discussed about chipping away, I suppose the experience in America was that chipping away, because you went from there and used that experience for success in your professional career. I mean, yeah. You went on and won a title and went to do some really great things. I mean, I suppose it's fair to say that your life up until that point was about learning to get where you needed to be.
Yeah. And then, like you said, the chipping away bit, you get to a point where you realise. So I read a quote this morning, actually, in one of the books I read, and it says, "It's vanity to do with more that which you could do with less." You know, it's vanity to do with more that which you could do with less. So that's the chipping away bit. You know, the chipping away at the noise. It's not about more. It's not about having more or knowing more. It's about doing more with less, or chipping away at all the outside noise and narrowing things down to it's like more simplest form, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And how did you feel? So you were BAMMA champion.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. How did that feel winning that title after the setbacks that you had? You had some losses in your career. You've in America, and then you've won a title. How did that feel afterwards? What was that like for you?
At the time, not amazing. Like, so.
It's interesting you say that, because I thought you would have gone, yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, at the time, so, like, Cal Tanzo was still with us at that time, and Cal, for those who don't know, was like the head coach of SPG UK. He was my head coach, and he's since passed away. And he's probably the biggest influence on myself in martial arts and the mindset towards martial arts. And he's probably, a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I don't really give a shit about much, especially about this. But he's probably, I'd say, had more of a huge influence on people in martial arts than anyone else I've ever met in martial arts. And again, some other people's experiences will be different, and they disagree with me, and that's cool. But from my experience, that's what that guy has had. So at the time, Carl was with me, and he was massive on this mindset stuff we've been talking about, as in like whittling things down to what they actually mean and what's necessary, getting rid of the unnecessary, making things. It's a bit of essentialism, if you would. So at the time, although yes, I did want to win the BAMMA World title, and I did want that accolade, and all, it was never just about that. That was just a part of the journey. So we won the fight, and we won the BAMMA World title, and we done it pretty well. You know, won it in the first round. And on the night, I was made up and everything like that. But the day after, it was back to work. You know, it wasn't like, let's have 2 weeks second pit. I don't think I've got. I did a couple of days after I won the title. we had a day at the gym where we let like all look like kids and stuff come and get a picture with the world title belt and all that. I thought that was pretty cool. Apart from that, I've got no pictures with my belt whatsoever. I've never had another picture taken with my belt. Oh, sorry, I've had one for a photo shoot. Of that one picture, which is my Instagram profile picture, you'll see. Apart from that, I've never had any other pictures done with my belt. That's it. Because from that point on, it wasn't about that belt anymore. That was done. It was in the past. It was now something that I can or can change. It was gone. And it was, what next? What does that lead me to? So
I suppose it's like, I suppose like a chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
Because winning that title was a close of the chapter to get the title,
Yeah,
and
exactly,
the next one opens to see where that then goes with the title, which is different.
Exactly, which is a bit of a crazy thing, and I'll try and explain this as well as I can, because at the time, yes, I felt like I'd had a big achievement and I'd won a world title and stuff, and I can always say that now forever, you know. But at the time, I didn't really. It didn't really mean all that much to me because I don't think on the like even if I won the UFC world title tomorrow, on the grand scheme of things of what have you achieved in that will never ever compare to having my kids, and it'll never compare to having a green beret in the Royal Marines. If I won £1 million in the UFC world title tomorrow, it would not mean as much to me as my green beret means to me. Not because it's harder to get or easier to get, just because me earning that green beret and doing the things that we did in our time as Royal Marine Commandos, especially like 2000 to 2012 kind of era, was a special time. It was a special thing that not many other people have experienced and never will. So, again, I said this is a hard one to explain. So, at the time when I won the title, although it was something I was aiming for and it was an achievement, it wasn't like the be all and end all to me. Now, it's changed. It's still not the be all and end all to me, but now I've had the time and I'm a bit older and I get to look back on it and reflect. Now I appreciate the time, the effort, the energy, the work that I had to put in to get there. Because while you're getting there and you're putting that work in, you're not thinking about it. You're on autopilot. You're doing it, and you should be, because that's where your mind should be at. But 5 years gone by, and I'm looking back at it and I'm thinking, shit, I did all that. Me and Cal did that. Cal was there every step of the way with me, and I was thinking, when I look back on it now, I'm thinking like, I did that. I have got the capacity to do that kind of work, to put in that kind of effort. So now, and that's been, especially the last 12 months while we've been on lockdown and we've had time to reflect on stuff. It's become more of a driver for me than it was back then, because now I'm looking at it thinking, well, I know for a fact I'm a way better fighter than I was then. Technically, I'm way better. If I fought the guy that won that world title, technically, I would wipe the floor with that guy. I've got a few more injuries than him. I've got a few more bumps and bruises because I'm a few years older, but I think physically I'm better as well. I think I'm a lot stronger now and stuff like that. And then when I look back on it and I know that when I was that guy, I had the capacity to put that kind of work in. And I know that I've still got that now. Now it's kind of a way that I can, like back then I didn't appreciate it, but now I appreciate it. And now it's a thing where I can sit there and go like, I can do better than that. Not that there's anything wrong with what I did, or not that I need to do better, but I know I can. I know I can top that. I can do better than that, and I want to do better than that. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
Not from an ego standpoint either. Not for like if I do nothing else in my life at all, make no other achievements from today, I'm happy because I've got, like I say, I've got my wife and kids upstairs, and that's what makes me happy. But I want to, out of loving the sport and loving a challenge. And does that make sense?
So does that mean then? So your fight career still open? Is it like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was supposed to fight on Cage Warriors in March. Made weight, done the fight camp, made weight, and then my opponent pulled out on the day of the fight, which was heartbreaking. Then we talked about fighting again in July, but obviously lockdown came and all that sort of stuff. And then throughout last year, I've not really been able to put because Cage Warriors have actually run a couple of shows, but I've not really been felt where I've been able to put full time and energy into it because well, same as everyone else that owns a small business. I've been spinning the plates to try and save the business and keep it surviving. But part of that process was also making the business run smoother, making it run better, so that all the problems and challenges we faced as a business don't keep occurring. And I feel like I've used last year, and I feel like the start of this year, and my wife's been massively instrumental in that because she's helped out loads. I feel like now we're at the point that when we are allowed to reopen and we do relaunch, I can focus again on being that fighter who won that world title. And like I said before, I already know him 10 times better than him technically. And I know physically I'm ready. So yeah, the plan will be, I would like to fight again, maybe April time, May. I considered the fights on Cage Warriors behind closed doors and all that. And at first of all, I thought, nah, fuck that, I'm not doing it. Because a big part of what I do is like the support and like the community. Going back to when we were speaking earlier about this town, Rochdale, like every fight I have, people from Rochdale follow me everywhere, and that's not me. I'm not giving it the big one. We've just got such a good community in this place. And I don't want to give that up just for the sake of having sneaking a quick fight in. So I don't know if I want to. If it depends how lockdown goes. If it's going to be locked down till May, I might end up having a behind closed doors fight. If that's not the case and they're allowed to have crowds and they say like, oh, crowds will be back in June, July, I'll probably wait for that because I want to have my people there with me. I want to be able to perform in front of the people that have supported me through my whole career.
I mean,
so, yeah.
And I keep my fingers crossed for you that happens because I know lads travel across the country to come and see you, to support you, and I know that means a lot to you, which is fantastic.
Mate, Jules rocked up in fucking California. Jules like WhatsApp me. For those who don't know, Jules is a lad we're in the Marines with, absolute legend.
He's got no kids, mate.
He has.
What? Which Jules are we talking about?
Jules married.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, got you. I was thinking another Jules, sorry, mate.
Oh, yeah, no, he's fully kidding up, Jules. So, Jules, like, WhatsApp messaged me. He always WhatsApp messages me. And he's like, I'm coming out watching your fight. And I'm like, yeah, nice one. It's in California, He's like, yeah, of course. But it's the old duty message, innit? You think, there's no way you can expect someone to travel to California.
And he's waving in the crowd as you're like, what?
Jen, about 2 days before the fight, I look on my WhatsApp, message off Jules, bro, what hotel are you in? I'm like, I told you, mate, it's in Fresno, California, mate. Don't worry about it. He's like, I've just got off the plane. I'm in Fresno now. Which hotel is it? I was like, are you in Fresno? He's like, yeah, I'm in Fresno. Where are you? He's like, Jen, get there. We got straight down to the hotel. Spent the rest of the week with us, and in the hotel, and then the fight, and all that. What a guy! What a legend!
Amazing.
Just going back, sorry a minute, just for your viewers that might not quite understand or might not, but that's what it. When you were talking earlier about the brotherhood and the camaraderie within the Marines, that's what you're talking about. That type of bloke who's just going to go drop of a hat. Yeah, I'm coming to Fresno to watch my mate have a scrap. That's the type of bloke, and that's what makes the core what it is, isn't it?
No, absolutely, and that's why we've loved being in it. It's an incredible family environment, a home away from home.
Same type of bloke that'll shave your eyebrows at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, true. And I need to make sure these don't ever get shaved off. Mate, I mean, it's fair to say you've been a busy boy because the things we've discussed is about your self-development, and I know you're a massive family man as well, and we haven't spoken about that. But the last few years, you've really invested into your coaching and in coaching of your fighters, and I mean that is something that you've just discussed, like the wealth of experience and knowledge and the setbacks that you've had. How are you finding coaching with your guys, and what is that experience like? So when you're in the ring or in the octagon, sorry, not wrong sport. When you're in the octagon, you can control the controllables to an extent, but your coach can't. Now you're the coach. What's that feeling like being on the outside of it?
Actually, on fight night, you mean?
Yeah.
Are
you more nervous than you were when you fought For your
Tons more
fight.
nervous.
Yeah.
I'm way more nervous when my guys fight than when I way more nervous. It's not even close, man. But the job is to get that work done beforehand. Right, you know, like we were saying earlier, we can't turn up on fight night and then say, right, this is what I want you to do, X, Y, and Z, and then expect him to go, yeah, no worries, and do it. The job is to use the weeks and months beforehand, preparing him for that without him knowing, you know, getting him to do certain things in a certain way, getting him to, you know, focus on certain things at certain times. Like the job is to try and get him there, because like training for a fight can be difficult as well. It can be a time where your motivation goes up and down like this. And like I say, I've had 30 odd fights now in different countries and with different outcomes and for different titles and different, in sometimes in a bloody boxing ring, in a workman's club. So I've kind of experienced all them ups and downs, highs and lows, all that sort of stuff. So I know the way it goes and I know the way motivation works as well. So like your job as a coach is to kind of guide them along that journey without them knowing, if you know what I mean. So try and see it ahead of time when motivation's starting to dip or when people are starting to peak and that sort of thing. And try and give them what they need at the right time when they need it. Because like everybody wants to do pads with the coach. Everybody wants to do pads with the coach. But it's not always the necessarily thing to do or the right time for it. Like there's the right and a wrong time for things. And like sometimes, and people wouldn't like, the fighters wouldn't like to hear this, but sometimes a fighter, the skill that they might need to develop right now more than anything else might be what we've talked about today. Might be being able to focus for 3 5-minute rounds without doing a bit of looking around or seeing who's watching them or letting the mind slip somewhere else. So with that guy, me doing an hour's pads with them might be wrong and make them actually a worse fighter because it's coach led. It's me telling them 1-2 hook, roll, cross, uppercut, whatever. What might be more valuable to that person might at that point in their career at that time is me trying to teach them how to focus. Or tell you what, 3 5-minute rounds of shadow boxing without losing your stance, without moving out of stance. That's an extreme example, obviously, but it's about balancing them things of when to do what with them. Everyone thinks is like do jiu-jitsu twice a week, wrestling twice a week, striking twice a week, spar once a week, hit pads and run. Boom, done. That's not the case. Everybody's different. You've got some people that are super focused, like use Jamie Kelly's one of my pro fighters. Jamie's like super focused. If I was to say to Jamie, I want you to shadow box for the next 3 hours without losing stance and without looking over your shoulder to see if anyone's watching, I guarantee that's all I'd need to say to him. And he would then shadow box for 3 hours without any distractions because he's at that level, that mental level of being able to take on information and do it and just focus on the process. Not everybody's at that level at that time. Does that make sense? And it's not a level of ability and it's not a level of potential either, because just because someone's not at that level at that time doesn't mean they haven't got the same potential to get there as Jamie or potential to do as well as Jamie. It's just that that's not what they need at that time. So like with Jamie, I'll do a lot more stuff where we're doing drilling pads, skills work, adding new skills in, because again, I know with him, he'll take it in, add it. That's now part of his game. Other people it might take longer to develop them skills, or I might not even focus on developing them skills in a one-to-one setting. I might want to see them intrinsically develop them skills in the group setting without the distractions and talk to them more about becoming less distracted and more focused, and then develop into doing a bit more one-to-one work. Or do you get what I mean? So it's about kind of plotting the journey for someone, and everyone's individual. So you've got to treat everyone the same as a coach, as in the rules are the same. You're either show up on time or you're late. You know, you either put the work in or you don't. You know, and I'm black or white with that sort of stuff. You know, if people aren't putting the work in, I'm going to tell them they're not putting the work in. I'm not going to skirt over anyone's ego or anything like that. And conversely, if people are putting the work in, I'm going to tell them that they are putting the work in, and it's not to suck them off or anything. It's just to tell them, you know, you are doing what's required. You are doing the right things. Keep doing what you're doing. The results will come.
Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy coaching?
Yeah. I think it's what I'm best at.
What is it about coaching that you love to do? Why do you like it?
So I think I've led quite a diverse life with the experiences that I've got through the Royal Marines and the experiences that I've been fortunate enough to get through mixed martial arts as well. A lot of that was being in the right place at the right time, getting on the Ultimate Fighter, getting contracted to Bellator, getting contracted to BAMMA and Cage Warriors and stuff like this, and all the experiences I've done in the Marines. I think my biggest skill in life, so like even in MMA, you know, and this is again something I've been thinking about a lot this year, a lot more than any other time in my life, is like what's my biggest skill in MMA? And like I'm never going to be a UFC world champion. I'm not going to be Khabib Nurmagomedov, and I don't want to. But I can be a massive influence on someone else's life through martial arts. So I can, using my experiences, my best skill is to communicate them experiences to other people. Does that make sense? Right? And martial arts is the best way for me to do that. So that's why I love coaching so much, because it allows me to do that. It allows me the opportunity to use my mistakes, all the mistakes I've made and all the good stuff I've done as well. There's a few of them, more mistakes though, but it allows me to use all that and communicate it to young people and other people in Rochdale or around Rochdale or anyone who comes to my gym, to help them become a little bit better version of themselves, a little bit better, whether they want to be a UFC world champion or whether they just want to use martial arts to get a little bit more confident or a little bit more self-aware or whatever it is. They give me the opportunity to do that, and that's why I love coaching.
Oh, fair play, mate. I think it's been a fascinating conversation. I've loved it. Your lads are absolutely lucky to have you, as much as I know as a coach, and I know that the family at home, they love you as well. And
Fred is with me. They've been sick of me for this year.
Dad, go back to work with you. But mate, thank you very much for talking to me about your experience. And I hope, let me rephrase that. I know that people listening to this will be able to take a lot of what you said. And it's not just about the fight game, it's translating that into their own lives as well, because there's simple introductions that will improve across their lives across the board. So mate,
appreciate that, man, and more. I really appreciate the call for coming on this. When we spoke before you came on, and you were explaining the can will kind of philosophy, mate. I like it. I really like it. So well done for that, and it's been good to catch up, mate.
Cheers, mate. I appreciate it.